So I work a lot with people, and I schedule meetings and talk to people, and need to follow up them and do all this kind of classical lead generation and follow up sales things. And what I really hate doing is putting manually all the information that I'm supposed to do, that I'm supposed to put into the system, like who's that person, who company the person belongs to, did I already send a message, did I not, when was it, and all these things. And in the last weeks, we talked a lot about many possibilities, how to make it easier. And today at night, I couldn't really sleep. It doesn't happen to me very often. I mean, besides the kids, but it doesn't happen to me very often lately that I think about work. And I was having like one word in my mind all the time. It was Postgres. For some reason, I think you infected me with all this nerd AI database infrastructure things.
You can do everything with Postgres.
Apparently, yes. So anyway, my idea was, I don't really need a CRM system, and I don't really need, or I don't want to put all these things manually, and probably nowadays I don't need to do this manually. Actually, I would like just to send a voice message like I would do to a human person, saying, hey, this is the person I just connected. That's her or his LinkedIn profile. Get me all the information who this person is. Does he fit our ICP, or put the information about the person that they just contacted them, or they got us an answers that need us to answer them, and we need to prepare it, or we need to prepare a pilot, or we need to make a follow-up, or whatever it is. And I just want to send this voice message. And my idea was like that my agent will create me a Postgres database or whatever it is and put all the information there, and somehow magically it will appear on a visual dashboard that I can see, but I'm probably never going to use, because the only thing that I actually want is that the agent tells me every day, okay, today you need to follow up this person, and for this person you need to prepare a presentation because they asked for it, and this person had questions, and this one you didn't talk to for a couple of months, so it might be worth to come back to them again. And as I always do, I came to you, Alex, to ask how to do this.
Yeah. So, but you talked to your agent already about this, right? So yeah,
yes,
to your AI agent.
Yes, and my agent gave me like two ideas. The one was that to make like a basic MVP, I could just use Airtables, and the other one was I could use Postgres and what does it say, NoCoDB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
but I don't know which is the best option and why, yes, and what is actually possible and what not.
Yes. So Postgres is the actual database behind it. Behind all of these systems, you have some sort of database. It can be MariaDB or MySQL or Postgres or LightSQL and so on. So different possibilities there. And NoCoDB would be a user interface, which is very lightweight. It's easy to spin up and easy to maintain. And you can connect it to whatever DB you want, I think. At least you can connect it to your Postgres. Maybe it comes even with the Postgres. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. I just played around with it once. And Airtables is basically the same thing. So Airtables looks basically like Google Sheets or similar to Google Sheets. It's like you can do some fancy stuff, but in the end, you would simply have a table system. You could just write something in it, reorder, blah, 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 or do all this stuff, and then connect it via API to something else. But you told me before, so that's interesting that your agent told you, your AI agent told you, you could use Postgres with NoCoDB or any Airtable. But actually, in my opinion, you only need Postgres because you want specifically no user interface. Because you told me you only want to send, let's say, a Telegram message or a WhatsApp message to some agent, and the agent should then do the work, the admin, like put something into some tables and find the person you need to follow up, and then give it the email address or the phone number and so on. Yes. So I think that's actually very smart and easy to do with with a good database. And Postgres, in my opinion, is the best database existing. And you could actually simply use Hermes, because Hermes is a great agentic system with lots of functionalities built in already. So you have a browser in Hermes, you have the ability to write skills inside Hermes. So you can tell Hermes, okay, I have this Postgres database, for example, and you can connect with this and this and this variable and build a skill to connect to it, and then create a CRM, like a schema for a CRM. So just to explain, a schema is basically the structure of your database. So a CRM has a very simple schema. Actually, it's very easy. You have first name, last name, title, and all the fields you want, like address, street name, house number, blah blah blah, all this stuff, phone number, email, and then like opportunity, all this stuff. So it's actually very simple, and you only need to tell your agent to create a schema, which makes sense. So you should talk to your agent about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, what you want to save about people. And then the agent would give you some ideas on what the schema should have, what the schema should hold in order to use it on a regular basis, and not blow it up to like to a crazy degree, because it's unnecessary. So you really need to focus on what you actually need in your own CRM, because you said in the beginning you don't want to have a CRM, but you need a CRM.
Yes.
So you need this customer relationship management system in order to do your work properly, because otherwise you would just lose track. So you need a CRM, and the CRM it's like most software is actually only a database with some form of UI, like user interface in front, so you can use it as a human. Now with AI, everything changes, and with AI agents, you don't need the user interface anymore, because you actually only need the data. So you don't need to see what's written and how many people you have in your database. You don't need to visualize it, because it doesn't matter. You only need to see, this is the person I need to follow up today. So, and if you create your Postgres database with your prospects, then you can just ask Hermes, for example, or OpenClaw or Claude or ChatGPT. You can just ask it, okay, which person do we need to follow up today? And then it will just give it a list. It will read the database, find the people, and give it a list, which is nice. And Postgres is amazing for that, because it has an API. It's very easy to create an API around it, like with Prisma, for example. So, and then you have an API layer which can be used programmatically. So the agent can build a skill rather than do pure SQL all the time against the database. And then we were talking before we were doing this, before we were starting to record, we were talking about, you can actually, you told me an interesting thing, which is like the idea of, what if the agent is doing everything wrong? Or you want to have like a control layer in order to see.
Yeah, that's something that that feels so unintuitive for me to not have a dashboard. It's like,
Yes.
on the one hand, I hate having this dashboard because I never look in it anyway, and because it's such an incredible amount of data inside there, it's very it starts to get overwhelming at some point. So so as a normal, maybe you stop looking into it, or you just do the things that you think you're doing, you should be doing, not really based on data or actual facts, or things that you just remind, oh, actually I should have followed up this person like weeks ago. And of course in a dashboard you can filter, and you get these notifications, what to do today, and you can sort those your leads and contacts. But somehow it's still a lot, and I don't like doing this. On the other hand, it feels very, very spooky not to see this. Because in a way, then I just trust my agent to tell me every day what to do, but I have no idea, is it right? Is it correct? Where does it have this data from? Because I don't see this data. I have, in a way, no means of visually control if the information that I feeded my agent about a lead, for example, when to follow up this person, or some notes that I made mentally after the last talk. I have no means to control it if the agent actually put the information into the CRM system and is actually taking them into account for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so that's something that bothers me, that feels very like, okay, oh my God, how am I supposed to work like this?
Yeah, you need a UI. That's the typical thing, because we are used to user interfaces, right? So we are still trained. I think this is one of the biggest problems of our age group, like millennials and last millennials. We used to do manual work or manual labor, and now we grew into this digital world, and now we are in a world where basically everything is driven via agents and not visualized anymore, because the visualization just adds overhead, which is completely unnecessary. Like, if it's correct, if it's correctly done, then you don't want the user interface, because it just adds unnecessary overhead, which you need to maintain and so on.
Okay. So maybe in order to stay like up to date with the world and the fast pace of changes, I should change the way I work in a way that I don't work visually anymore, but I use
absolutely
more voice and agents. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super scary. But the thing, you started already working not inside the browser with OpenClaw and ChatGPT and so on. You started working inside your terminal, which is
my computer looks like it would be a total nerd.
Yesterday I came into your office, and then I saw you weren't in the office, and then I saw your open laptop, and you had, like me, you had your 4 different terminals splitted on the screen, like in quarters.
I copied that from
each
you.
Quarter, yes, each quarter has one terminal, and each quarter has one other agent. So you're working with 4 agents in parallel, which is great. I think that's the first step. The next step would be to tell the agents to work on autopilot and do stuff. But anyways, that's great, because you're working in the terminal already. Then you can also you can use the terminal as a user interface in some degree. So a very in SQL, in the scripting language SQL, which is a scripting language for databases, and PostgreSQL and MySQL and MariaDB and so on, and LightSQL, they all use SQL as the underlying language, which is used in order to write something to your database, in order to change your database, and in order to read your database.
Mhm.
So in SQL, you have simple standard commands like select, for example, where you can select a certain table and certain rows, and then you can say, okay, give me the header name of these rows, and then show me row first name, last name, email, and show me all the from this table. Show me all the rows which have first name, last name, and email, for example. And I don't know, follow up date today. And then it would just give you a very basic, in terminal, it can print you a very basic table with pipes and dashes where you see a table, like properly see the table. It doesn't look nice or something, but it's just, you see it in your terminal. So this is a means of having a UI. So if you really want to see visually what the agent has written into it, you can even ask your agent to create the SQL and show me this table with all its rows, for example, or with all the rows for Maxim Mustermann. Yes. And then you would see exactly this entry, like you would see it in NocoDB, or like you would see it in a regular CRM, and so on, but in terminal style. So very easy, very simple.
So there are possibilities also to do it in this basic way without having another tool or another database or another like sheets or something to do it visually. But okay, but let's say I want to go.
This is total nerd. This is total nerd.
I don't think I ever gonna use it, and I don't think that's for any human beings who are not developers and who love being in the terminals.
I mean, it's in the 80s, everybody used it like this, for example. I mean, there were no user interfaces.
But who used computers in the 80s?
Yeah,
Scientists.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyways, so let's say I go full in, skip the dashboard, skip the visuals, I go full in, and I just use my voice and ask my agent every day to send me a message what to do today. How can I be sure, or how can I know that it actually gives me the right answer?
You can challenge it. We had this the last time. We were talking about this the last time. You can challenge the answer. You can challenge what it said and make sure like it said actually the right thing. And then you can challenge it like, why did you give me this answer? Or why did you give me this prospect? And then it needs to rationalize why it did it. And this is actually the simplest way in order to just cross-check. Like, okay, is this actually the only person I need to follow up today, and why? This would be a good follow-up for your agent in order that your agent can rethink or reread the database and rethink why it just gave you this one prospect, for example. And then you can also get like very granular and very strictly defined, like give me all prospects I followed up last week where we, I don't know, didn't write a follow-up note. And then it would give you this list, for example. So you can start working with your agent like as you would do it with a virtual assistant. And the assistant sits in front of your user interface.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't want to do it on a daily basis. So you mentioned a virtual assistant, like a human person. I would do this like for a week or for a month in this learning period to get the person who works for me the idea of what I expect, of what I need, and to understand also for myself, is the person willing to learn, and is she actually delivering, or is he delivering what I need? If I would have to challenge this person every day and double check and double ask everything, then I would fire this person after 1 month. And
Yes.
I don't want to fire my agent. I want to make sure that it's built from the beginning in a way that works. Yeah. So how is that possible, or should I?
It's possible.
Is there?
Yes.
So how can I do
that
this?
Brings us back to two things. The first thing is the schema of the database, which needs to be very strict in terms of it needs to have like the demographic data, it needs to have like the personal data, like let's say first name, last name, email, phone number, LinkedIn profile, and then also follow update, last updated at, created at, I don't know, first follow-up notes, second follow-up notes, I don't know, other input or various information. And then you need to nail this schema down. Like this cannot be changed. And everything must adhere to this schema, for example. Or you could even say, okay, we have a rule where we do 12 follow-ups for each lead until we get some sort of follow-up response. So then you could have like follow-up 1, follow-up response 1, follow-up response 2, follow-up response 3. Each is a simple row, is another column in your schema. So you have first name, last name, email, follow-up 1, follow-up 2, follow-up 3, and so on. And then you can tell your agent, as you would tell your virtual assistant, we're doing so many follow-ups as necessary until we have these 12 follow-up responses. Or maybe we have a definite follow-up response, like leave me alone, never talk to me anymore. Then it would just break the cycle. So, but this can be a guardrail. So you need two things. You need to have your schema, which is basically the checklist on what's necessary to do for every lead, what your agent needs to do for every lead after the learning phase on their own. So this is the checklist or the framework where it needs to work through, where we come back to rubric, which we were talking about the last time. It's the framework on what the agent needs to do, no matter what. And then the second thing is guardrails, which are one part of your rubric, where you tell the agent when to stop, for example. So it must not make another follow-up if the follow-up response to either of these follow-up circles was never talk to me again, for example. Then it must stop and make a note and stop then you have like another column in your schema which says stop, yes or no, for example.
Yes.
Or converted, yes or no. So you can have these as well. So in order, I mean, you don't want to stop it, you want to convert the leads. So you can have something like status or something. So the status could be like 5 different stages, for example, like lead, like cold lead, warm lead. What do we have? Like customer, former customer, I don't know, and never talk to again, burned. So you can have these, and the guardrails are basically something what you are developing together with the agent during working with it. So the guardrail is an MD file, a markdown file, which the agent needs to backfill every time it learns something. Or where you would tell the agent inside the learning phase, okay, write into your guardrails that we must never talk to people with the first name Alex. So no matter what. So for example,
never talk to Alex.
Yes, never talk to them.
Okay.
Exactly. Just send an email.
Dangerous.
Yes, exactly. So you could do this and then the agent would adhere to this guardrail. So this is very, very important for the learning phase.
So in the beginning, like in the first
rules.
first days or weeks, the agent will learn, and I will have to double check it, challenge it, and put more input into it. But at some point, is it okay for me to just go on with the work and trust it when it gives me my everyday tasks, or do I have to like review it once in a while?
You should do reviews in the beginning. I think it's very dangerous to just create an agent and let it work and never touch it again, because an agent is not an automated workflow. An agent has changes. The agent changes because the models are changing. Usually, you would start using the next frontier model, or the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
Yeah.
So, and all agents, like if you use Hermes, for example, you get so many updates, and these updates would rewrite your skills in certain ways. It would update certain functionalities, like for example the browser and so on. It can do suddenly it can do things which it couldn't do last week. So your agent will use the tool differently than before, for example. So you need to iterate and keep it up to date, and keep yourself up to date on what it is capable of and what not. So an agent is basically an organic structure which changes over time, and it also changes over time because of the work it did, and it will gain knowledge in terms of sessions and history.
Yeah. My agent told me today that I should generate like 2 or 3 different tables in a way. One for the companies and one for the people. And the third one I can't even remember. But does it make sense, thinking about it, if I just have the agent with this database in the background and I don't have any visual dashboard? Because if I have like a human being, and it does, okay, why?
Yeah, because it's an architecture question. So inside a typical CRM, you have different tables. For example, a company can have many employees working for the same company. So in order to keep this company true, and you only want to have this company once, like you have company A,
yes.
Let's say, I don't know, Coca-Cola. This is the one company you want to work with. So you have different prospects. You have Natalia, and you have Alex, and you have somebody else. And these prospects are working for this one company, Coca-Cola. And
but this one company is like one entity in the whole.
Yes, it's one entity,
system.
exactly. So you in a database, everything has an ID inside the database. So every row has its unique ID, and this ID cannot exist twice, which makes it unique. So you have one company, it's ID number 1 in your company's table, and you have 3 people in your people's table which have first name, last name, company ID, and company ID is 1 for each of them. So your agent or your user interface in a regular CRM would then just see, this is ID number 1, so I will show the name Coca-Cola in my user interface. So everybody understands, they're working for this company. And if you click this name, then you would get into the company and you would see the company. Right. Okay. So this is how the user interface usually gets built. And the agent uses the same structure because if you don't use it, you have the potential risk of redundancy and also duplicates, which can be truly different, because the company, I don't know, Coca-Cola US is a different Coca-Cola company than Coca-Cola, I don't know, England or something. So these would be two different companies in your company table. But if you only have Coca-Cola inside your table, or Coca-Cola England, and then you have Coca-Cola UK, and then you have Coca-Cola Great Britain, and then nobody knows already anymore what's going on, right?
So in a way, I need to be also very careful with the inputs that I'm giving. For example, in the voice messages, if I say to my agent, hey, add Max Mustermann to as a potential lead, and he works for the company Coca-Cola Great Britain. But in my system, I already have the company Coca-Cola, but it's like Coca-Cola UK. And the agent will probably put another company inside, right? So
that depends on the model you're using. That depends on the model you're using and the reasoning capabilities. So usually, if you work with, let's say, GPT 5.5, it will then read the companies and just see, there is a Coca-Cola UK and you wrote Coca-Cola Great Britain. So I can do two things. I can either use Coca-Cola UK, or I can come back, because it's ambiguous. I can come back to you and ask you, you said Coca-Cola Great Britain. We have Coca-Cola UK, or I found Coca-Cola UK in your database already. Should I use this, or should I actually create another one? This is exactly what we were talking about the last time, about trust with agents. If the reasoning model has great capabilities, it doesn't do something which it assumes. It does only things where it has the confirmation in doing it like this. That's the reason why it's so important to use a capable model for reasoning.
If I would use the newest models, can I count on it that in situations like this, they will
very likely
come back to me? Very likely. But I cannot be 100% sure.
I mean, can you be 100% sure by anything? It's like, that's really difficult, right? So.
Okay.
But you can count on it, basically. I mean, working with everything will create mistakes, and agents will make mistakes, but they will less likely make mistakes than some human.
Yes.
It depends on, but we're working with developers, and it's a standard thing where I get back from, it wasn't in the brief, I didn't do it. It's like, okay, come on. But it's like, for me, it was like, okay, you could have thought about this, because we're working on this project since years, so maybe. But it wasn't in the brief. So an agent,
you never know.
So the cool thing about AI agents is they will very likely come back to you if they are in a reasoning state and truly reason about this, like, we have this button color, or we have this button theme, but he only said I should create a new button, so I just create some standard button. Usually it would then come back, if it's not sure if it should use the theme or not, it would just come back and ask, should I do this button in the theme? Because it's very likely that this is actually the truth, and not like just create some standard button which doesn't fit the website, for example.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about reasoning models nowadays.
Yeah. Okay, and coming back to the CRM systems, it seems like it's not easy to build it, but like the idea behind it is pretty simple. So if I have someone in team who knows how to build it, like you, if I'm willing to jump into this completely new way of working and thinking and getting things done without unnecessary dashboard, just with my thoughts and with voice and with agent chat. Is there any need for let's say the old ones or the classical CRM systems with the dashboards?
No.
Okay.
completely none. I mean, that's the thing I wanted to say before. We grew up using ready-built software, which is capable of doing only one thing and one thing only. And now we start entering a time, technology-wise, where suddenly things start to interact and to get integrated and to interact with each other. That's the reason why APIs are so important, and opening up to other systems, because agentic work is going to destroy all the user interfaces and everything. So I'm 100% sure in 5 years, nobody will open a user interface anymore. It's a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time. That's the reason why we built Sally as it is. Like, you don't want to open your project management system and say, or like, and then type in new task, type something, and then assign it to somebody and so on. You want to just tell your agent, okay, we need a new button on this website. The button should be in theme topic. This is the website. Please take a look and write the developer brief, so an agent or another developer can actually do it in the correct way. And then the AI needs to do all this admin, blah, blah, and give it to assign it to the developer and so on. Yeah. You don't want to do this. And it's the same thing in the CRM.
How long do you think it will take until, like, let's say, a significant group of people and companies will actually be willing to change the way they work currently into very long? Okay. Very long is like 2 years, 5 years, 10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years. I think people are so slow and people want to keep their work. I think that's the biggest problem. People want to keep their work and they're really intimidated by AI and by what's happening.
I mean, it's also difficult to actually change, especially if you work like for the last 20 years, as we did with Dashboard and with Visualize. I can see it for myself. It's difficult to change that,
it's also
make
difficult
the switch to actually know like, oh my God, what's happening? I could do, or I did so much work, but I don't see it, which means for my brain, it's not done because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, the crazy thing also is like...
That's difficult.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But also, it's like, for example, filling stuff into a CRM is actually, I mean, it's considered work nowadays. And you're
work. Yeah?
You're a great
Someone has to. Someone has to do this. Yeah.
Yes, if you have a really clean CRM and everything is filled in and everybody else knows what to do and all this stuff, it's a gigantic heap of work. But the problem is, actually nothing happened just because you filled this in. You didn't do any outreach. You didn't do any insights and so on. Nothing happened. It's just admin.
That's one side of the story. Because if you don't do this, or if someone else doesn't do it, or if an agent doesn't do it,
you don't have a baseline.
You don't have a baseline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the reason why it's important.
You also don't know whom to reach out to, whom to follow up.
Exactly. That's the reason why it's so important. But the thing is, nowadays, we need to shift from doing this admin work, which takes hours and hours and hours and hours. Maybe it takes even 50 or more % of our work time. It eats up the time of the whole workforce. It's just admin. And we need to shift now to let the agent do the admin and work 100% of the time, which is extremely intimidating. So I see it myself. I mean, we are pushing like 20-fold of work what we did like 2 years ago with the same team.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But the truth is, the speed is crazy as well. So like how fast we're developing things and how fast we're implementing things, we're testing things, we're reviewing stuff, and so on. The speed is something we need to get used to. And especially us with I mean, we're working since more than 20 years now. So it's a very difficult reality to speed up everything in order in terms of visible output. Like, I mean, now it's not about, hey, did you document everything correctly? Because if you did, that was a great day of work. Documentation nowadays is like, that's baseline. Of course it needs to be done. Plus, you need to push all the stuff. And of course you need to write your timesheets. And of course you need to write the tasks and check everything and check all the boxes in there and make sure it was done. And this is where agents need to help us. And I think it's just a matter of time until we are used to this new type of work. And also, like what I saw from myself, if I open Sally, if I open my own task my own tasks, I get intimidated every time. I'm just overwhelmed every time because it's so many tasks and so many things. So I don't want to open it. I want to ask my agent, okay, what is the most important task we need to do for this client and for this project in order to show something today? And then it will just fetch, okay, we can do 1, 2, and 3. These are the most important things. And then, okay, let's work on it. And then we're working on these. And I think this is way more, it's a way better user experience than opening a user interface where you have like 5,000 or 50,000 leads in your list, in your CRM, and you need to work through them. This is just like, oh my God, where should I start today? Yeah, okay, I can filter it somehow. Okay, let's filter for priorities. And then let's filter for, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And everybody creates his own rule set of how do I filter through this mass of possibilities,
and it takes
this
weeks
endless
to make
possibilities.
the setup. Yeah.
Exactly. And after filtering, you're overwhelmed and tired already. And you needed 2 hours already. And then you start doing your first call, which is super stupid.
Yeah.
Actually, like,
and then you get
it's
people
literally stupid.
who come to you and tell you, do you know how long it takes to set up HubSpot?
Yeah, whatever.
Even though it's actually the basic tool set up from the very beginning. But anyways, what I wanted to say about the project management, that I'm also started to use it the way that you're using it. I don't look anymore that much into the dashboard because when I look into it, for me, then I spend like lots of time just scrolling through the tasks and thinking what should I do today. And especially in my case, where I have very like short time frames to work because with the kids and picking up from school and doing this and that, I have usually periods like 1 hour or 2 hours of work, and I don't want to spend this time with thinking about what to do. So it really helps me to ask the agent, okay, I have now 1.5 hours exactly. What can I do? What is the most important thing? And also a task that is doable within this time frame.
Yeah. Totally.
So if I can manage that with CRM, I'm very excited. I'm going into it. So maybe in a couple of weeks, we can make another podcast where I can tell about my experience and how did it feel to work like that. If it was a success or if I decided to go back to
a regular old school CRM and look at it for hours.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Have a productive day. Okay. I looked at the CRM for 2 hours. Yeah, totally.
So now, Alex, you know what to do, and I'm looking forward to start to work with my new agent.
Nice. Okay. I put it on my list. I will build it. Yeah, nice.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Thank you.